today, and we'll just say so. Welcome to Harrogate, and today is it's a nice opportunity to just take things a little bit slower, and let's kind of start by giving you a shot of where we are on the railway bridge. So, it must be the nicest railway bridge anywhere in the country, because for a start, if we just turn you around, give you a little panning shot, keeping as steady as I can. We're kind of on the Stray, so an area of kind of green space, protected green space in the middle of Harrogate. But it is a beautiful day, Susan, yeah. But as we kind of come back over, we cross the railway, so you can see a railway bridge over here. And then once we cross the railway, it's such a peaceful railway bridge, but just so you believe me, there is the railway track that kind of comes through on its way into Harrogate Station, which is about half a mile or so in that direction. And then we get into the blossom paths. So let me kind of walk sort of slowly onto the path, and then we'll just follow the avenues, and we're going to talk a little bit about blossom and its significance and what it kind of means to us, and then we're going to head down, have a look at some flowers and what does the Valley Gardens. So if that's not a nice way to spend an hour in one another's company, I don't know what is. So Harrogate, of course, famous for its cherry blossom. I think we'll head that way first and kind of take a zigzag. It's very busy. So as I say, I'm going to walk slowly so that hopefully the lack of gimbal will inconvenience us less than otherwise it might. So blossom arrives early. The way kind of early life arrives. Not as something to be analysed, but something to be felt. And when you walk beneath avenues of flowering trees, the world kind of becomes soft around the edges. The light shifts, colours gather, and the earth itself seems to kind of loosen. So let's get into the main path here so we can get the full impact. Thank you, Robin, great doing. And when we're kind of experiencing, I'm just going to hold up people taking photos, and I say the slower we go, the better experience I can kind of give you, is I think when we pass into these places, we've got flowers all around us, we kind of we enter a state as we would as infants, kind of before language, a world where sensation and experience is enough, where beauty doesn't need to be earned or indeed explained. It simply surrounds you, and that's enough. Isn't it something? And yet across history, cultures have poured meaning into blossom, kind of reading into it the same qualities that early life teaches us. Renewal, tenderness, impermanence, and the quiet turning of the year. So across the world, tree blossom has long been a marker of more than spring. It signals emotional rhythms, communal rhythms. The moment when people step outside again, and just look, as I kind of pan across, how the arrival of this blossom is driving people's behaviour. Everywhere you look, people out there want to be part of it, want to commune with this. There is something elemental about these avenues of light beneath the branches. To look, to breathe, to share the moment. To experience beauty precisely because it will not stay. In China, cherry, plum and peach blossom appear in poetry, painting and seasonal festivals. And they signal vitality, renewal and the harmony between people and the natural world. They're drawn by the same instinct that has guided generations for them. This is a communal activity that we're part of today. I'm trying not to film people, but hopefully you're getting a sense of quite how many people, young people, people of all ages, different cultures, are brought here to this one space because of the blossoms. What a perfect reason to come anywhere. Exactly, people start for your wedding and you get confetti thrown in kcm. A little bit of breeze and all the confetti you're ever going to need. And as you can see, if I just pan across, we're going to walk up this avenue across here in a minute as well. You know, there are row upon row of these avenues, so it's great. So Blossom, I think whenever it appears, reminds people that the world is capable of beginning again. Cherry blossom was the natural clock of the year. I'm just going to pause for a minute, just give you some close. I do hope you're enjoying this. As I say, unfortunately without the gimbal, it's not quite as easy to keep it still, but hopefully you're getting something of a smoothness, and it's not interrupting your enjoyment too much. And Mitzi on a pink heart, that is perfect, Mitzi. The movement, isn't it? There's something as well, there's something very lulling about the movement. Were early symbols of awakening. Almond blossom appearing before the leaves was a sign that spring was coming, even when the air still felt cold. Hopefully that has improved your buffering. We'll cross over onto this side and hopefully a little bit busy. In Himalayan regions and northern India, the first apple and apricot blossom marked the moment winter finally loosened its grip. Villagers celebrated the first bloom as the true beginning of the year. A moment of relief, of gratitude, and of quiet anticipation. So hopefully that has settled down, and we're now able to bring you avenue here. I think we'll walk this way, and hopefully the signal will be pretty robust. And from a botanical perspective, blossom is the tree's brief moment of possibility, the window in which pollination can occur. Its colours, its scents, its structures have evolved to attract pollinators. So yeah, some of them will hold back because they don't want to compete with the other pollinators, with the other trees. So they'll hold back their pollen until such time as they can command the attention of the pollinators. And agriculturally, of course, blossom. We're still on. Are we still on? Just let me know. Can you just let me know that you can see and hear, because it was been suffering. I think there's just a lot of people using 4G here, and we've hit a dead spot. But let me know if it's back on, and we can walk on down through. I think we've probably had. Just tell me if we're on. So I just need to know that buffering comes and goes. Let's walk on. I think we've kind of got a problem with the signal down here that is impacting us, and I think a part of it is just the sheer amount of people. But we will keep going, and we'll walk across this way. So, of course, a late frost can devastate an orchard, but conversely, a warm, calm spring can bring abundance. So what we'll do is we're going to walk down towards the Valley Gardens, and we're going to look at the flower planting down there. I think it's just the sheer amount of people, the usual. There's nothing in the past to suggest this was going to happen, but we'll keep walking towards the centre and hopefully it will kind of pick up. So blossom also supports biodiversity. It offers early nectar to bees emerging from winter, which of course becomes a lifeline for pollinators and for the ecosystems that depend on them. So if we walk down across this way, I'll try to replay. Is that you've lost sound now? Hello? Can just somebody tell me, because obviously there's a delay now, I'm not necessarily seeing what you're seeing. So have we got picture and sound right now? Mike, I'm not hearing or seeing from anybody, which is a bit frustrating. But hopefully somebody can see and hear me somewhere. It's not just us. You can hear us. Fantastic. Great. The sound's good. You can see us. Can you hear us? You've got sound. So we've walked away from a lot of people. So and picture, fantastic. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. So what we'll do is we'll walk through Harrogate. We're going to have a look at the flower plantings. And so sorry we can't, but hopefully you got enough of a sense there. But I think it was just the sheer amount of people. I'll just kind of turn around. Yeah, so the last bit, we'll just do it in distance. So of course when blossoms thrive, landscapes thrive. And among flowering trees, apple trees, by the way, I don't know if you know this, sort of carry one of those quietly fascinating stories of reproduction and diversity. So some apple varieties are self-fertile and they can set fruit using their own pollen. So in other words, they can just simply reproduce without requirement of insects being involved. So these trees hold their lineage steady. The blossom is pollinated by the same tree that produced it. And so, of course, conversely, the apples then remain true to type. So basically, whatever the variety, Golden Delicious is famous for this. Whatever the tree starts as, its offspring is genetically identical. But many apple varieties are cross-pollinating, relying on insects to carry pollen from one tree to another. And here's where the story becomes more intricate. Because if a bee visits a blossom from a different variety, or even different species of apple, the fruit that forms will not match that of the parent tree. The blossom accepts the pollen it's given, and the apple that grows belongs in a new genetic combination created in that moment. So over the life of a single tree, this can happen again and again. One branch may carry the fruit of one lineage, another branch something entirely different. A mature apple tree can hold within it a quiet archive of crossings, each apple a record of a meeting between blossom and pollinator. Isn't that wonderful? And it's going to remind you that even in the most familiar orchards, nature is experimenting, renewing and beginning again. A kind of gentle echo, really, of how societies grow and how early life opens into difference. So we need to cross over on this road and then we can walk back across the stray. So I'm just going to pause. And I think it's fascinating that. So, you know, it's like diversity, isn't it? It's like a society. You know, we can either worry about kind of purity of bloodlines, and that's got its place, or you know, we can think about what happens when things get mixed up, and that actually that can be strengthening to the tree rather than to the detriment of the tree. It's just a fascinating example that people seem to be very keen to sort of suggest that diversity is purely a human invention. But nature is full of it. I mean, look at how many of us have crossbreed dogs. Now, crossbreed dogs these days, very fashionable, of course. But they used to come from casual encounters, did they not? So there we go. Diversity in nature. Yes, exactly. Down back alleys. So mythologies across the world have woven kind of tree blossoms into their stories, linking it to life, death, beauty, and transformation. So I mentioned earlier about the kind of Japanese. Cherry blossom expresses the poignancy of brief beauty, a reminder that life's most vivid moments are when it's at its most fleeting. In Greek mythology, the almond tree symbolises devotion and endurance. Its early blossom a sign of hope in the hardest seasons. So this row of shops here will break in a minute, and then we shall get some rather attractive planting. Harrogate is very, very famous for its planting, so we'll go and enjoy what's there. So in Greek mythology, as I say, you've got this idea of hope in the hardest seasons. So there's this theme running through, isn't there, that we've talked about on tours before. You know, in a time that it's worth remembering for us that we live in this era of artificial light, but that is a very, very recent development in the history of humanity. For most of humanity, people lived with the light of the sun, and the light of the sun in winter was a few hours a day, depending on where you are. It could be almost no hours a day if you're in kind of top parts of Northern Europe. So consequently, this idea of the return of sun, of light, of growth and flowers, imagine the psychological impact if you're literally getting 6 hours of daylight, for months on end. So I think it's kind of worth remembering for us that whilst we look forward to spring, think how much cultures of the ancient world and of centuries back must have appreciated it. So in Celtic traditions, thinking about the Irish now and the Scots, hawthorn blossom was both protective and dangerous. It was a tree of thresholds, a guardian of the other world. This wasn't the route I was planning to walk all the way down the Blossom Avenues, but of course the signal buffering was a problem, so consequently we've taken another route, which at the moment isn't quite as attractive, I appreciate, but I'm trying to give you a nice bit of the tray and hold this as stiff as I can, because I'm also doing, for those who didn't pick up at the beginning, started inauspiciously this tour, plummeted downhill thereafter, insofar as that we got gimbal fail. So I'm working off a fixed selfie stick rather than gimbal. So if you're seeing a slight jerkiness rather than the normal smooth flow, that's the reason for that. But otherwise, it's sunny. It's Saturday. We're live. We're all together. We're in the beautiful town of Harrogate. Mrs. John is with me, and so that will be enough for now. That's definitely enough for us. Everyone hit that. Thank you very much. Yeah, Linda. Give me that positive feedback. Build me back up after my disappointments so that I don't feel like a big loser. But look at these buildings coming to view now. So, in Christian symbolism, white blossom represents purity and renewal. Almond blossom especially carries the promise of better things to come. So across all cultures, really, blossom is really just a flower. Awful cord here. It's a message, a reminder of the delicate balance between beauty and transience. Tree blossom has always lived in the borderlands between the natural and the supernatural. We'll come down in a minute. I'm just going to take a sip. My drink. Isn't it beautiful blue sky today?
April. Lovely from northern England, isn't it?
Thank you, Robbie. That's lovely to hear that you get better and better, because none of us want to go stale, do we? So consequently, we think, how can we stay fresh and do a bit of reinvention whilst not, of course, getting rid of the bits that work. But getting rid of the gimbal is definitely one of the bits that work, so it is slightly harder to do it, but if I grip back there, we'll hopefully manage. So it's a white knuckle tour, quite literally. I'm doing our very, very best to keep it as still as we can. So yeah, tree blossoms is sort of part of the mythology as well, in the borders between the natural and the supernatural. There's some blossoming again. So long before botany explained pollination, blossom was read as the sign from forces larger than human understanding. It appeared suddenly, it transformed the familiar, and then it vanishes just as quickly. So you can imagine how that would capture the imagination. In European folk traditions, hawthorn blossom marked places where the veil between realms grows very, very thin. In Norse mythology, the first blossoms of spring were linked to Freya, the goddess. So Freya was the wife of, the guy in Valhalla, Odin, the mother of, brain on mythology now, she was the main queen, Balthus, and his evil brother, who again, our brain's struggling to remember. But it represented the kind of the stirring of the land, the softening of winter. Winter had thought its very, very worst that it could kind of throw at you. And then it was meant to ease its grip and start again. In Slavic folklore, orchard blossom housed protective spirits. And families greeted the first bloom with offerings of bread or milk, asking for a fruitful harvest. So here we are, we've finally reached a place where we start looking at some planted beds. So blossoming in these traditions was never just a biological event. It was a presence, a reminder that the world was alive with meanings that could be felt long before they could be explained. So let's run to Victoria Avenue. I went to college down here. Studied drama many years ago, just behind those trees up there, my old college. Now long gone. So blossom resonates with us because it's both abundant and fleeting. It arrives suddenly, it transforms the world and disappears. The brevity gives it an emotional charge. People gather beneath it, they photograph it, they celebrate it, and then they mourn its passing. The ache of noticing something precious because it cannot last is universal. It's also a metaphor for youth, isn't it? Anyone who stood beneath a flowering tree and watched petals fall has felt it. Because blossom teaches us presence. It invites attention, and it reminds us that beauty is not diminished by its impermanence. It's defined by it. So despite vast differences in geography and culture, tree blossom carries remarkably consistent meanings. Renewal, hope, purity, love, transformation, and the cyclical nature of life. Oh, they love these. What are these flowers? Okay. It reminds us the world is always turning, always renewing itself, always offering moments of beauty that only asked to be noticed. Blossom is not just a season, it's a message, and one that humanity's been reading for thousands of years. And yet, each spring, it arrives as if for the first time. No matter how much history we carry, no matter how many meanings we inherit, blossom returns, brand new, just as early life does, surrounding us with its beauty before we have the words to express it. So, walking from the avenues of the Stray towards the Valley Gardens now, we're going to head down towards the gardens down Montpellier. We're going to head up and watch the flowers all along. Pet alligators, I didn't see that. Somebody had a pet alligator. Wow. I'll have to watch back on the video when we get home and see if that's the case. So hopefully we're now getting a much better picture signal. Enjoying the lovely flowers. So as we leave the kind of blossom behind, which I know we've already kind of done, but I had more to say about blossom than I had time to film it, which is rather a shame, but there we go. Hopefully you got the gist of where we're going. And you can walk around the wall around here. This scenery obviously is changing. Not least, of course, it's now urban. We've got these terribly fine buildings. But we've also now got a very, very different form of flora. It's planted. So blossom doesn't kind of ask to be understood, it arrives on its own terms. Unarranged, uncorrected, offering beauty without requiring interpretation. But here, as the formal beds begin, we step into nature that has been shaped to carry intention. Borders, patterns, and colours chosen and combined. Plants encouraged in one direction and restrained in another. This is nature that's been arranged to be read. A place where flowers were once expected to speak. If any of you have come across Victorian flower language, something that I only kind of recently sort of picked up on, but I've been delving into it, and it's jolly interesting. Because in the Victorian era, understanding those meanings wasn't a curiosity, it was pivotal. And before we look at these meanings themselves, it helps to understand how this language lived in the Victorian world. It wasn't confined to a single gesture. Let's just come in a bit closer on these. These are yellow, really are beautiful. Excuse me. Beautiful wallflowers, yeah. So it moved through daily life in many forms, this flower language, and each carried its own nuance. So sometimes it was the gift of a single flower. slipped into a gloved hand during a walk, or maybe quietly left on a doorstep. Sometimes it appears in hand-tied posies, exchanged during visits, or perhaps carried on promenades, with each bloom chosen for the message. It added or it softened. So you could basically make, not proclamation is probably too strong a word, but you could express sentiments through the flowers that you chose, the colours. And we see it now, of course, inside vase arrangements in drawing rooms. And this is kind of started during, the Victorian period. We'll just walk down one more time, just down here, and we'll walk down towards the gardens. So a cluster of white violets, perhaps, on a mantelpiece, or a spray of hawthorn in the hallway, speaking to visitors without a single word being said. And this flower language extended to greeting cards, stationery, decorative motifs, paintings, embroidery, even fashion. Flowers stitched into shawls, pinned to bodices, woven into hair. And they weren't merely decorative choices. They were part of a shared symbolic vocabulary. You see, in this society, the Victorian society, direct expression was often impossible. Understanding flowers wasn't optional. It was how people communicated desire, gratitude, apology, warning, hope. Let's get on to some of the meanings themselves. Just coming and panning on these lovely blooms. Isn't that gorgeous? So a single bloom could kind of talk with surprising clarity. A red camellia, I don't know if we're going to see any camellias today, but a red camellia didn't simply suggest infection, it declared you are loved. A sentiment far too bold to be spoken aloud in many Victorian settings. So you see how the reticence to use the language that we might feel comfortable with today was quite literally supplanted by plants. Should we try and find a way to cross? Hawthorn offered hope, a quiet, steady kind of hope that looked towards the future without demanding it. So I'm just going to cross over, not film a whole bunch of people having a drink, and there's some nice gardens here, and then we'll walk down towards the Valley Gardens. But I do have to just keep my eyes and ears open as we cross over here, because it's a busy kind of road. And we can just go now. We've got nice steps in our centre. So we're over here. So a white violet expressed modesty, not shyness, but a gentle sincerity, a way of saying, I'm here with honesty and without pretense. A yellow rose, now you might know some of this, carried jealousy, its meaning sharp enough to shift the tone of an entire arrangement. So if you sent somebody an arrangement that had yellow roses in it, and it was congratulating them on their wedding, that was a very mixed message that you were sending. So you have to be incredibly careful, because people understood this language. It's more bars rather than parking on the lawns. It's bars that put seating outside, because there's so much space here. Aren't they gorgeous? Aren't they lovely? So including apple blossoms. So some tulips just down there. Don't want to come too close. Apple blossoms just as a promise of better things. A soft, forward-thinking message with a hint of possibility. But they were quite subtle, all these messages. It wasn't about, kind of making it so ramrod obvious. It was this delicate symbolism that was applied in flowers that it just did to understand. If you couldn't understand this, you were out of kilter, out of step with your peers in your kind of social group. So let's talk a bit about how these meanings were kind of constructed, because these meanings were only the beginning. in the Victorian world, a flower's message depended more on far more just the bloom itself. Just have a look at this, then we're going to walk down. Isn't that gorgeous? The flower ranches in Harrogate really are an absolute credit to them, isn't it? It's a beautiful town. It is. KCM Harrogate is an absolute joy. We've been here a number of times, but we never tire of their beauty. So yeah, it wasn't just about the flowers. So a colour, for instance, could completely alter the intention. A red rose spoke of deep romantic love. A pink rose suggested admiration. A white rose conveyed innocence or remembrance. And of course, the yellow rose, jealousy. So very, very different meanings. It's not just a case of say it with roses. You have to be very, very clear about what messages you're sending following the code. So even in the same species, the shift from crimson to pale yellow could turn a declaration into a warning. Red rose for love, yellow rose something far more destructive. But intrinsically tied, perhaps the flip side, the dark side of the rose is the yellow rose, the jealousy. So perhaps something in that of the human condition is being spoken of. So number, of course, carried its own grammar as well. A single flower was intimate, a quiet, personal message. 3 flowers formed a polite gesture suitable for acquaintances. A dozen was a declaration. Still today, right? Unmistakable in its seriousness. Still today, a dozen red roses is the benchmark, isn't it, for a gift for some Valentine's Day. So expressing that devotion before you could say it is basically saying, in Victorian society, you're the person I want to marry. You know? So these things that we sort of continue onwards, and those that have got very deep pockets, I think a dozen red roses on Valentine's Day is about £200 or £300, isn't it?
Still waiting.
It's ridiculous. Still waiting, says Mrs. Chase, Mrs. John. Well, guys, what can I say? If you want to make me, we'll do a pre-Valentine's tour next year. And if you like it enough, we'll see how many roses I can afford to buy it.
I'm more likely to buy you.
Yeah. So as yet, but, we haven't done that. But so yeah, arrangements also shape the meaning further still. So a tightly bound posy suggested deliberation and care. A loose natural cluster implied spontaneity or sincerity. I think again that would still sort of think about that today, wouldn't we? You know, there's kind of naturalistic approaches to flower arranging and there's formal approaches to flower arranging. So whilst I'm talking about this as a kind of Victorian language code, I think there's many echoes that are kind of continued onwards into our era. So it's a lovely area, kind of cafe bars. You've got Betty's Cafe up at the top of the hill on Montpellier Parade. Imagine, yeah, what a lovely idea, Ronnie says, imagining school children passing flowers under their desks instead of notes. Well, I think that'd be a better world, Ronnie. That's the world that I would like to live in. By the way, we just passed our friend Alison's house. I'll not show it, but Alison Telfer lives hereabouts. But she's not on the tour, she's in Liverpool today. So we wish her well, hope she's having a nice time. And if she catches this on replay, hopefully she'll be pleased we've pointed out that we're in her neck of the woods. Well, thank you very much. What a polite gentleman. Yeah. So yeah, so loose clusters, you've got kind of spontaneity, sincerity, and then flowers placed side by side to equal harmony. Flowers deliberately separated could hint at distance or uncertainty. So I hope you're realising now what a kind of social nightmare it is. Next time you're thinking about, you know, giving somebody some flowers from your garden, be very, very careful of the messages that you're sending with this. So even the direction mattered. A bloom presented upright meant acceptance. The same bloom inverted meant refusal. Exactly, white rose for Yorkshire. All that. So meaning lived in these details in a kind of choreography of gesture. And it was the way that nature was arranged to speak and to say things that people felt they couldn't necessarily say. So a bouquet, when you think about it, come together, could be a whole sentence. A posy could be a confession. And a single bloom could be a refusal. So isn't that wonderful? I do love finding out things like this, sharing them with you. I do hope you've enjoyed that little bit of a 5-minute or so dive into Victorian flower language. I thought it was just the sort of thing that you guys would like. It doesn't look fun so far, doesn't it? Do help me if I'm wrong. So now coming towards the Valley Gardens. And we're kind of walking in a town, of course, shaped by Victoriana. So in the sort of place shaped by this language. So you need to think about these flower beds, not simply as displays, but as curated expressions. Colours chosen to harmonise or to contrast. Plants placed together to create emotional resonance. And a bed heavy with white flowers might have suggested purity or remembrance. A border deep of red could hint at passion or seriousness. So visitors to Harrogate, of course, seeking help, we're just passing the spa now. So where people came to take the foul-tasting water, seeking health or retirement or romance, would have understood these cues and that have read the gardens the way that we today read text. A sprig of hawthorn offered during a walk, a violet pinned on the lapel, a rose quite left on a bench. Each one carried meaning. Each one was part of a conversation that couldn't be spoken about. So Victorian flowerbeds didn't only send private messages, they also spoke in public ones. And of course we're about to go into the gardens. So the gardens mark moments of national pride. Royal births, marriages and especially jubilees. Floral displays became civic language, a way for towns to declare loyalty, celebration, confidence in the future. Patterns echoed royal colours, initials, crests and symbols. And beds were timed to bloom at the right moment, so the landscape itself seemed to join in with the festivities. And in 1887, Britain celebrated 50 years of Queen Victoria's rule, the Golden Jubilee. It was a moment of extraordinary national confidence. Britain was the richest nation in the world, its empire vast, its industry unmatched. And Harrogate joined the celebration with elaborate floral displays and the opening of the Valley Gardens that same year, and it belongs to that mood. A gift to the public, a place of leisure and pride, a landscape shaped for pleasure and for play. And yet looking back, we can almost feel a sense of poignancy. You see, this was a high point, a moment of certainty before the world began to change, before innocence gave way to the complexities of the century ahead. The Victorian love of coded expression, of saying things gently, indirectly, symbolically, would not survive the century unchanged. As public life grew more urgent and more direct, the subtlety of flower language began to wither. That's the tulips over here. And then, of course, came a war, the First War, a war so vast, so catastrophic, that words themselves seemed to fail. A conflict that tore through families, towns, and generations, including the children who once played in these very gardens. And in the aftermath, a new flower meaning emerged, stark, unmistakable. The Flanders poppy, a symbol of loss, remembrance, rebirth, and hope. A flower that carried not a coded message, but a collective grief. But in 1887, no one could imagine what lay ahead, and the children playing on the manicured lawns of this newly opened Valley Gardens, running between the Jubilee flower beds, laughing beneath the confidence of an empire at its height, would grow into the generation that endured the mud of the Western Front. So as we walk through the Valley Gardens today, we walk with them, not in sorrow, but in recognition of the world that they once knew. A world of leisure, of family outings, of gentle social rituals, of parks designed for pleasure and for play. A world that felt permanent, generous and safe. Beautiful, aren't they? And so now as we step deeper into the Valley Gardens, we enter the world these children once knew. A world built for leisure, for health, for pleasure, and the simple joys of being outside. Victorian parks were not just green spaces. They were social stages, theatres of everyday life. Harrogate, as a spa town, understood this better than most. People came here to recover, to breathe cleaner air, to take the waters, to walk slowly through beauty as part of their healing. And so the parks were designed with intention, not only to soothe the body, but to lift the spirit. A place for families, for play, for innocence. Look around and imagine the Valley Gardens in their early years. Children racing across the lawns, hoops rolling, kites lifting, laughter carried on the warm air. Nannies watching from shaded benches, parents strolling at a gentle pace, time itself seeming to soften. These were days when summer felt endless, when the world felt safe enough for play to sit at the centre of a child's universe. And we're going to walk up to the boating lake in a minute. I'm glad you enjoyed that. But before we do, I've just got a little set of postcard pictures from the early Edwardian era that I'm going to share with you. It's on a playlist again, like we were last time. So no particular order, but just take in these scenes of late Victoriana, turn of the century scenes from Valley Gardens here in Harrogate. So colourised postcards, not done modernly, that this was the fashion in the day, because obviously photography was black and white, so they did love to colorise. And so you get these very kind of sort of naive representations of colour, but I do think it's nice for us to see it as they did, as places of colour. And of course, if you spent your time in the Valley Garden and you're in amongst colour of the flowers, the black and white photographs would have been a very poor representation, wouldn't they? So you can see actually why they would begin to do this colorisation. But as we look at it now, it does look really rather crude. Another. So on the Sun Colonnade, which is on the other side of where we are from now. So again, those in relaxation and recuperation, spending the afternoon in peace in the landscape. And of course, very good if it was wet weather. By the boating lake, which is where we're heading. In a minute, we're going to talk about boating lakes next up. But aren't they a lovely set of postcards? I know, it's a real age of kind of glamour, of people kind of dressing up. And what else have we got there? So again, you're going to see that building just in a minute, the tea room, it's tea room now rather, but of course it was the Magnesium Spa, the place people go and take the waters on a morning, taste of fowl of course, so they'd have a Harrogate Farrow toffee afterwards, take away the taste. And there again we have the new Magnesium Spa. Look how dressed up they are, as KCM was saying them. Yes, they're from the Friends of Valley Gardens website that I've kind of lifted these, so it's our thanks to them that we just have this little bit of colour and just set it in time and kind of context, because I think it just enables us just to feel that we are there, time bridging, of course, between us, but we're experiencing the same world that they did, and it's a world of quiet elegance. If you look how dressed up everybody is within these pictures, it's certainly not a casual celebration. So there we go. I think that's all the ones I've got for you today. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll just get rid of that for you. So there we go. So let's go on to the boating lake. And so before we kind of picture the boating, so the Magnesium tea room is just down here. When we're thinking about boating lakes and water, there's something, and I want to emphasise this for those that are joining us from the other side of the Atlantic, just to kind of reinforce the message really. The Victorians had on opposite Gunnerer coming back. It was very, very heavily cut back a couple of years ago, and now it's gradually coming back. It's a giant rhubarb, if you remember. Yeah, that's the Gunnerer. Yeah, it's the giant rhubarb. But it was very, very heavily cut back, and now it's on its kind of way back. So the Victorians were obsessed with model boats, and this is because it's so central to the British identity, isn't it? We were the greatest maritime nation, the greatest naval power on earth. So the Royal Navy wasn't just a fleet, it was the backbone of national identity. And that pride spilled over into leisure, into craftsmanship, and in spectacle. Just walk past the magnesium tea room now. Very nice, isn't it? So across Britain, model boat clubs flourished. Men, engineers, craftsmen, veterans built astonishing replicas. Brigs, cutters, ironclads, miniature versions of famous ships. They weren't toys, but feats of skill and patriotic devotion. And on weekends, boating lakes such as this became their stage. Crowds gathered along the banks, hundreds, thousands at times, to watch these tiny fleets manoeuvre with surprising grace. And on days like St George's Day, which we've just had, clubs staged ambitious reenactments of battles such as Trafalgar, fought again in miniature, Victory, the ship before them, patriotic songs drifting across the water, Rule Britannia, Britain never, never, never shall be slaves. It's a spectacle, pride and play woven together in the ripples of a quiet park lake. In front of us, over here, we have the bandstand. A little bit up there, is it? I forgot where the bandstand is. But we'll find the bandstand. So if the boating lake brought energy, the bandstand brought something gentler. The heartbeat of Victorian afternoon. And this was a cost of society based on leisure. You had the money. There was no work. You had servants and flunkies do everything for you. So it's about how are you going to fill your days, what are you actually going to do with your time. But of course, if you're here recuperating from an illness, you've quite literally got all the time in the world. So on summer days, brass bands gathered beneath the iron canopy. Uniforms bright with colour. Deep navy, scarlet trim, polished buttons catching the light. The sun glinting off a... Is it? Do you know, it's ridiculous, I can't remember where it is. Never mind. Imagine it. The sun glinting off cornets, euphoniums, each one gleaming like a small sun of its own. I think it's over there. The conductor raised his baton. A hush rippled through the crowd. And the music began. Patriotic marches, romantic waltzes, light operatic arias, tunes everyone knew, drifting across the lawns like the warm air itself. We'll go to the Japanese garden, I think. So families settled into folding deck chairs. Some listened, letting the music wash over them. Others dozed in the heat, hats tipped forward, lulled by the steady pulse of brass and drum. Children would play at the feet, rolling in the grass, chasing each other between shrubs, darting in and out of dappled shade, their laughter threading through the music, becoming part of it. It's a soundscape of a world at ease, a world that believed afternoons like this would last forever. Now, if I just spin you kind of round, we're looking straight into the sun, so you probably can't see very well, but just kind of behind we've got the kind of Grand Hotel. So, a beautiful place for people to stay, but of course, servicing this required huge numbers of people. So Harrogate was full of big houses and grand hotels, elegant on the outside, but powered by an invisible workforce within. Maids, porters, kitchen hands, laundresses, footmen, gardeners, chauffeurs, people whose days began before dawn and ended long after the lamps were lit. Time off was rare, precious, hard won. And that's why parks like this mattered so deeply. They were close, They were free. They were beautiful. On a Sunday afternoon, domestic staff stepped out in their Sunday best, clothes carefully kept, shoes polished, hair neatly arranged. And for a few hours, they were not servants, but young men and young women with hopes, friendships, sweethearts. They walked the path slowly, taking in the music, the shimmer of the lake, the scent of the flowers drifting on warm air. Some bought an ice cream, a small luxury, a taste of celebration. Couples found quiet corners beneath trees. Friends laughed together on the lawns. And for a moment, life felt spacious, generous, and possible. These parks were not just leisure spaces. They were dignity made visible, a reminder that beauty belonged to everyone. And of course, amid all this play and promenade, others moved through the gardens at a different pace. The visitors who'd come to Harrogate to recover. The town was famous for its spa waters, its clean air, its promise of restoration. And people travelled from across Britain and far beyond to take the waters, to rest, to breathe, often pale from long illness, wrapped in shawls, guided gently through these gardens. Some walked slowly on canes, others were wielding elegant bath chairs, attendants pushing them along smooth paths, so they could take in the colour, the scent, the soft movement of the leaves overhead. And what they came to see was not just beauty, but botany. Victorian gardeners filled these parks with exotic specimens brought from across the empire. Palms, ferns, tropical blooms that seemed strange to northern eyes. Plants whispering of distant climates, distant cultures, distant possibilities. After taking the waters, the visitors sat in the tea rooms, sipping gently, watching the world pass by. Families, children, lovers, promenaders, all moving through the same shared landscape. For them, the gardens were medicine, a place where colour, air and quiet could knit the body back together. And when we step back and look at the Valley Gardens as a whole, we begin to see something deeper. These parks were not just beautiful spaces, they were microcosms of Victorian society. Every class, every age, every story moving through the same landscape, each finding something different in the same air and light. The wealthy promenaded in confident arcs. Domestic staff savoured the rare hours of freedom. And children played without care. Visitors recovered from illness, moved gently through the path, taking colour as medicine. And binding all of this together, quietly and steadily, were the flowers. The common language, the shared experience, beauty that belonged to everyone. A rose admired by a duchess and a kitchen maid. A palm that delighted a wealthy invalid and a young gardener on his day off. In a world defined by hierarchy, flowers offered a rare equality. Beauty that asked for nothing, and it gave itself freely. And perhaps in the end, this is what these gardens were always designed to do, to appeal to the child within us all. Because beneath the promenades, beneath the brass bands, beneath the Sunday best, the careful rituals, there was something simpler at work, something older, something universal, a longing for colour, for open space, for sunlight, for the feeling of running freely through the grass. Gardens for health, yes, for retirement, for refinement, for display, for social order, but also for joy, for wonder, and for the small bright pleasures that remind us that we are alive. And as we walk through the Valley Gardens today, we carry all of that with us. The families, the lovers, the workers, the invalids, the children, all those lives layered like petals in the same shared space. A garden is never just a garden. It's a place where society breathes together, a place where beauty becomes common ground, a place where, for a moment, we can all feel young again. Thank you everybody that has joined me today in Harrogate. I do hope that you enjoyed that. Sans gimbal, if we get wobble cam at times, I do apologise. There's only so much you can do. And my arm is ready to fall off now because I've been holding it so sternly and so rigidly for the last hour. But hopefully a simpler meditative tour. I can no longer. So, yeah, I think that's it, Tish. You know, it's that elemental thing, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's built for people, and of course, it means that in these chastened times of public finances, there's such an easy thing to cut. There's a soft underbelly and a target. Now, thankfully, in places like Harrogate, there is what they call the social capital, to have people get involved as volunteers and run things. That's not always the case. The place where parks and flowers are most needed, where beauty is most needed, where hope is most needed for people, often these are the very places where you just don't see flowers, where we need the green shoots for the young people in the future. So I think parks are incredibly important. But so is virtual touring and bringing you together as a community. So thank you everybody who's joined us. Like I say, if you are able to contribute, I'm not going to lie, that it is kind of necessary to keep me going. But I do hope that as and when you get the chance, you're able to make a contribution. Not least it looks like I've got another gimbal to pay for. But that aside, whether you've enjoyed it or not, I bid you farewell from Harrogate and look forward to seeing you very, very soon. So thank you everybody, and we'll just finish up on some flowers, and you can send you on your way as the wind blows the flowers. Absolutely KCM, many types of beauty, and we all get to enjoy it together. That's honesty. Apparently it's honesty, which is great. So what a way to finish. So thank you everybody, and goodbye from Harrogate.